What if the most famous artifact in history is hiding more than it reveals? And what if decoding it was never about language, but about controlling truth itself? Discovered by chance during war, the Rosetta Stone became the key that rewrote ancient Egypt. But some believe it wasn't just a message from the past, it was a test for the future. What you're about to hear has been buried in footnotes, locked behind museum glass, and dismissed as myth. But tonight, we're opening the case, and following the clues that lead to a version of history they never wanted you to translate. They called it a miracle of archaeology, a single stone that made the silent voices of Egypt speak again. But few ask why it appeared when it did, or who truly benefited from its translation. Because behind the academic glory and the museum spotlights lies a deeper enigma. One that connects secret societies, suppressed texts, and a race to decode power itself. This isn't just the story of a stone. It's the story of a message hidden in plain sight. And what happens when we finally learn how to read what was never meant to be understood. For centuries, the history of ancient Egypt remained shrouded in indecipherable symbols, as if an entire civilization had been locked away behind a lost language. Until, in 1799, an object was uncovered that would change everything. A slab of stone, inscribed with 3 different scripts, emerging from the sands of oblivion. Its name? The Rosetta Stone. But what few mention is where this stone was found, not in a sacred temple, but inside a French fortress during a time of war. Why would a key artifact for decoding the ancient world be buried in a military stronghold? Mere coincidence? Or part of something far more calculated? The 3 inscriptions engraved on its surface, hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek, appeared like a manual for unlocking ancient Egypt. But the mystery runs deeper. Why these 3 languages? Who ordered it to be carved? And why did it vanish for centuries, only to reappear precisely when modern empires began expanding into the East? Throughout history, emperors, popes, and even archaeologists have hidden information deemed too dangerous for public knowledge. Could the Rosetta Stone be more than just a linguistic tool? A marker? A warning? Or perhaps a symbolic key to even greater secrets? By unlocking the language of the pharaohs, we also open portals to texts that speak of gods, technologies, and events that don't quite fit into the traditional historical narrative. An avalanche of stories was recovered, but was everything truly translated? Or was part of the truth left out on purpose? This episode isn't just about a stone. It's about what happens when a modern civilization deciphers the codes of a much older, and perhaps more advanced, one. The translation may have been literal, but the impact was symbolic. History would never be the same again. And what if the Rosetta Stone was only the beginning? A catalyst. Because now, with the linguistic secrets of the past unlocked, we're starting to uncover evidence of something even greater, buried truths that were never meant to resurface. In the next segment, you'll discover how it all began, and why. In July of 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte's troops were advancing through Egypt in a military campaign wrapped in imperial ambition and scientific curiosity. During the construction of a fortress in Rashid, the ancient Rosetta, French soldiers stumbled upon a black basalt slab, inscribed with 3 different texts. At that moment, they had no idea what they had unearthed. But it wasn't an archaeologist who identified it. It was a military engineer named Bouchard. Why was an engineer digging in the middle of a war zone? Could it have been an intentional search for hidden artifacts? Many now suspect that the French already knew something important was buried there, and used the war as a smokescreen to retrieve it. The stone was quickly sent to scholars from Napoleon's scientific expedition. Amid maps, measuring tools, and seized documents, the Rosetta Stone stood out as an accident, far too significant to be accidental. The urgency with which it was packaged, protected, and transported suggests prior knowledge of its historical, or even esoteric, value. Soon after, the British defeated the French and claimed the artifact as part of the Treaty of Alexandria in 1801. But why were European empires so eager to possess a mere slab of stone? It wasn't just seen as an archaeological trophy. It was a symbol of power and of control over the narrative of the past. At that time, Understanding ancient Egypt was more than just science, it was a race for cultural supremacy. Whoever decoded the hieroglyphs first would gain access to hidden knowledge that could shift the worldview, and perhaps unlock technologies, formulas, or secrets buried in the symbols encoded by Egyptian priests. Curiously, records about the stone's exact origin, or who carved it, are virtually non-existent. No ancient document mentions its creation. It's as if the stone appeared at the right moment, in the right hands, under the convenient pretext of war. Many independent researchers now ask, who really placed that stone there, and why? The next segment reveals how the deciphering of the hieroglyphs, celebrated as a triumph of science, masked a silent war between governments, secret sects, and occult societies. Because translating a symbol is only the beginning, understanding it, and what it hides, is another story entirely. The deciphering of the Rosetta Stone began as a collective effort among European scholars, but it was Jean-François Champollion who, in 1822, finally cracked the hieroglyphic code. Using Greek as a reference and Demotic as a bridge, he compared recurring names until he identified fixed patterns and phonetic sounds. The key was the name, Ptolemy. But there's an intriguing detail. Champollion was fluent in numerous ancient and modern languages, and yet it took decades to arrive at the solution. Many wonder, were the hieroglyphs truly that complex, or was there institutional resistance to accepting what the texts were revealing? Because the more symbols were translated, the stranger the hidden messages became. Among the decoded texts were not only political decrees, but references to divine rituals, interactions with celestial beings, and symbolic technologies. Some hieroglyphs didn't refer to known objects but to instruments never before seen, rods of light, floating thrones, stargates. Terms that today sound like science fiction. More orthodox scholars dismiss these segments, labeling them religious metaphors. But independent researchers began to suspect the Egyptians were describing something more literal and more dangerous. Could it be that the sacred language of the priests concealed records of advanced knowledge, preserved in symbolic form? Shortly before his death, Champollion wrote in a letter that the ancient Egyptians knew more than we will ever understand. This phrase, often omitted from modern translations, triggered alarms in alternative circles. Was the decipherer of the hieroglyphs hinting that limits had been imposed on what could be revealed? Moreover, there are reports of stone fragments similar to the Rosetta Stone that were never made public. Some allegedly contained scripts that matched no known language, and were supposedly confiscated by colonial forces. If these fragments exist, where are they? And what secrets might they contain? In the next segment, we'll dive into the most controversial hypothesis, that the Rosetta Stone was an artifact deliberately left behind as bait, a selective key, designed to unlock only part of the vault of the past, while the true secret remains sealed. The grand narrative tells us that the Rosetta Stone was the key to unlocking Egypt's lost language. But a key is only effective if it matches the lock. What if the stone we so often celebrate is, in fact, a censored version of the truth? A manual with torn-out pages before it ever reached the hands of the modern world? The hieroglyphs it contains come from a single decree, the Decree of Memphis, dated to 196 BC, long after the height of Egyptian civilization. In other words, it doesn't reveal the mysteries of Djoser's time or the construction of the pyramids. It's merely a late reflection, filtered through a culture already under Greek influence. Like trying to understand the Roman Empire through a medieval edict. Moreover, many symbols found in temples and tombs predating the New Kingdom don't appear on the Rosetta Stone. The official explanation? Archaic style. But some argue that specific symbols were systematically excluded from public records, such as winged discs, depictions of hybrid entities, and instruments resembling energy devices. Another overlooked point is the complete absence of references to the time of the gods, a mythological era mentioned in texts like those from Edfu, which describe a civilization predating dynastic Egypt. If the stone were truly the ultimate key, why do these more ancient records remain undeciphered to this day? There are also questions surrounding the Greek inscriptions on the stone. Many believe this portion was used to control the narrative, guiding the translation through a Hellenistic lens of Egypt, an ideological filter built into the artifact itself, as if the key had been forged with built-in limits. If this is true, then the Rosetta Stone didn't unlock the past, it reshaped it. A domesticated version of history, approved by empires, scholars, and curators. A partial translation, preventing access to the forbidden core of ancient truth. In the next segment, we'll cross that threshold and explore the impact of the Rosetta Stone on texts that speak of worlds before ours, esoteric records, forgotten tablets, and languages that may have never been human to begin with. With the hieroglyphs finally decoded, ancient texts began to surface, many hidden for centuries within temples, sarcophagi, and flooded tunnels. And what these inscriptions revealed wasn't just religion, agriculture, or politics. They spoke of times before time itself. Prehistoric eras where the Netjuru, the gods, walked among men. Decoded manuscripts mentioned a first time, the Zeptepi, an age when luminous beings descended from the skies, taught the secrets of creation, and raised monuments with precision that, today, would require advanced technology. Most of these accounts were ignored or dismissed as mythology. Yet they were written using the same alphabet that the Rosetta Stone unlocked. Some texts, such as those from the Temple of Dendera, suggest anatomical, astronomical, and even energetic knowledge far beyond conventional Egyptian context. Depictions of lamps, turbines, detailed star maps, all recorded in sacred language. How was this possible without telescopes or electricity? Or did they have them? After the deciphering, European scholars began suppressing the stranger texts, relegating them to footnotes or unpublished archives. What became official history was only the surface, carefully filtered. The rest was confined to esoteric societies, Freemasons, and occult circles who believed these records held hidden truths. There are reports that full translations of certain papyri, like the Tully and Westcar papyrus, were never made public. Why? Because they mention events that defy modern physics, flying machines, time manipulation, and beings with forms that were not human. And the translators who dared speak too much? Silenced or discredited. The Rosetta Stone was, then, a turning point, but also a fork in the road. One part of humanity was led down a linear, logical, and safe version of history. The other plunged into a shadow world of manuscripts suggesting that civilizations before ours once mastered forces we are only beginning to understand. In the next segment, you'll see how the symbol of the stone was adopted not only by archaeologists, but by secret orders, military organizations, and global think tanks. Because translating the past isn't just about understanding what happened, it's about deciding what humanity is allowed to remember. Shortly after its arrival at the British Museum, the Rosetta Stone ceased to be just a relic. It became a symbol of intellectual supremacy, cultural dominance, and more subtly, a reminder: whoever controls the translation, controls the narrative. And that narrative, by all indications, was selectively shaped to align with the interests of the empire. But the fascination with the stone wasn't limited to historians. It also drew the attention of secret societies like the Rosicrucians and certain Masonic branches, who saw in its symbols the language of the gods. To them, the stone was more than translation. It was an alchemical key, an occult formula for reconnecting with ancient knowledge. Intelligence agencies and military groups took interest as well. Leaked documents reveal that alternative translations made by field agents were withheld in classified archives. The question that hangs in the air: why would a military be so invested in 2,000-year-old inscriptions? Could it be because some of those texts spoke of weapons, portals, or interdimensional communications? The stone began appearing on seals, logos, and even as a reference in military operations. In 1982, a CIA mission in the Middle East used the codename Project Rosetta, linked to artifacts recovered in the desert. Coincidence? Or a veiled admission that the stone represents far more than what's shown to the public? Corporate interest also surged. Some tech companies, particularly in linguistics and AI, began naming algorithms after Rosetta-related terms. The official reason? A tribute to the decoding of human language. But behind the scenes, rumors suggest the stone's symbolism is being used in experiments with forgotten languages, and perhaps even non-human ones. Today, the image of the Rosetta Stone is sold on souvenirs, shirts, posters. But behind this commercialization lies deep symbolism, a visual code that suggests secrecy, something yet to be fully deciphered. As if the object itself mocks us, hiding its true purpose in plain sight. In the next and final segment, we'll close the cycle. The time has come to revisit everything we've uncovered, and ask the ultimate question: was the Rosetta Stone a gift of chance, or a carefully planted message, waiting for the right mind to unlock what still lies hidden? The Rosetta Stone remains motionless in its glass case, guarded by lasers, alarms, and curious eyes. But what it truly protects isn't just its black granite body, it's access to the truth about our past. And perhaps, too, about our destiny as a species. It was found by chance, in Egypt, during a war. In a strategic location. At a time when the world was shifting. Some would say it was luck. Others believe it was placed there, a trap, a test, a trial. Whoever found it, deciphered it, and understood it, would gain access to something far greater. What was revealed through its translation is only part of the puzzle. Many pieces are still missing. Others have been hidden. And some, perhaps, remain buried beneath the sand, waiting for those who dare ask the wrong questions, and refuse to accept easy answers. We may never know for sure whether the Rosetta Stone was left by Egyptians, by gods, or by something even older. But what it represents is undeniable: humanity's attempt to speak with time. To listen to what the past still whispers, even when others try to silence it. And what if hieroglyphs were just the first of many languages? What if there are other stones, other keys, scattered across the world, waiting? Isn't that the true mission of a seeker of truth? Not to settle for a translation, but to search for the full text? In the end, the greatest mystery may not lie within the stone, but in the one who gazes upon it. Because the question it silently reflects back is both simple and unsettling. What if you are ready to hear, but the world is not ready to let you know?